discuss what's happening in Afghanistan. I'm pleased to be joined now on the programme by Julie Norman. She's a researcher at University College London. Welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us. First of all, how dangerous a moment do you view this for Afghanistan?
Well, unfortunately, this is a difficult moment for Afghanistan. The U.S. administration knew this, that when the U.S. and also the NATO troops pulled out, that there would most likely be an increase in Taliban activity and violence. And indeed, we now expect that the Taliban controls at least a third of the country and is poised to possibly take over other provincial capitals as well and continue to make gains. So the question, of course, is how long and intense this violence lasts. There is some speculation that the Taliban is engaging in this kind of operations activities right now to get an upper hand in the peace talks. But again, it's just a little unclear of where things are going, except that it's going to be a dire future ahead for the time being.
Yeah, we heard some of those sound bites just a short while ago of women talking about their fears now. There have been some concerns, haven't there, in the past couple of months that women's rights, so hard fought for in the past, many years, could now be lost. Do you think that's a real risk?
Well, that's certainly a very prime concern. There have been numerous gains made by women, by civil society more broadly over the past 20 years. And one of the real concerns with the U.S. and NATO pullout without any kind of peace agreement in place is that many of those gains will be rolled back, especially if the Taliban does take control of the state, if they are the primary actors in the government. There are specific concerns about women's rights being rolled back to kind of prior ways. And unfortunately, there's much concern on the ground for this. The Taliban is saying that they have changed some of their policies since the past, but obviously what we're seeing on the ground is real concern that women will really suffer from potential Taliban control.
Yeah, and just how strong do you think the Taliban is at the moment? We understand, as you said, they probably control about a third of the country, but for the moment that isn't big cities like Kabul. Do you think Afghan government forces will continue to be able to hold those cities?
Well, the real concern right now is that the Afghan army will not be able to control those cities with the NATO and U.S. withdrawal. There's real concern, of course, around Kabul in particular. A lot of U.S. emphasis right now on trying to secure the Kabul airport and Kabul more broadly upon their withdrawal, but that's going to be difficult. The Taliban also controls several border crossings at this point, including with Tajikistan. And what we've seen so far is that often in these situations, the Afghan army either just surrenders or, in the case of the Tajikistan border, just fled over the border. So right now, we're not seeing the kind of holding of territories that the U.S. and allies were hoping to see from the Afghanistan army at this point. But that's the kind of area where they will try and provide support, provide some kind of bolstering. But it's going to be very difficult for the army to push back against the Taliban's advances.
Yeah, and on that Tajikistan border that you mentioned, and we've heard news today that Russia is saying it's willing to help secure the border. What do you make of that? And what do you think Russia's goals might be here now that the US is pulling out?
Well, Russia has a pretty large military base in Tajikistan, and there was indication today that they may be mobilizing as many as 20,000 troops to try and secure that border. Again, one of the concerns for Afghanistan is that not only the domestic concerns, but that the conflict could spill over borders as well. And especially when we saw Afghan troops flee into Tajikistan, there's worries of potential refugee flows over borders as well. So there's interest for Russia to try and secure that border for Tajikistan, and that's one area that we know the U.S. and Russia discussed at the summit with Biden earlier in June to try and secure some of those border areas.
Now, we know that the president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, wants a ceasefire. Do you think a political settlement might be close?
It's going to be difficult. The peace negotiations and talks have really stumbled and stalled over and over again. We did see indication today from the Taliban that they are preparing a written peace plan that they hope to start activating and to kind of propose to the Afghan government within the next several weeks. So it's a positive indication whenever you see at least movement and at least attention to the peace talks, but it's going to be a very difficult road ahead.
Julie Norman talking to us there from